the Women in Business podcast. Insights from top financial professionals. Strategies to grow your practice. The future is female. It all begins here.
All right. Well, we are here with Debbi Markham. We are on a new Women in Business podcast, and we are going to hit on a really personal conversation for me personally, but also for you, Debbi. And so when I got the topic for this podcast, it really fit a lot with my experience growing up. And I was just kind of before we hit record, sharing a little bit about it. But for you, you focus a lot on the experience of losing a loved one. And so that one really hit home to me because I did lose my dad as a teenager. And so that was something you mentioned as well. And we'll get a little bit into your story. But for me, why this is such an important topic is me and my siblings and my mom, our life didn't change. She was lucky enough, my dad's best friend was an accountant, and his other best friend was a financial advisor. So they stepped right in, and we lived in the same house that we were raised in from babies. She still lives in the house today. And so we were really set up for success because of the people around her. And now I don't know all of the experience of where their financials set up correctly, but she had the right people to step in, and she didn't have to worry about that.
That's huge.
And a lot of people don't have that. And I've seen that from other friends that it's not the same experience. So for me, I was fortunate that we had the right people in our life, but not everybody does. And so I know this is an area that's really hits home to you. One, we talked about it a little bit briefly, you as a child, but then you as a mother. Do you want to share a little bit about your two experiences, actually?
Well, my experience was not as fortunate as yours as having the right people in place for my mom. We did not have the right people in place. And it wasn't that anyone set out to hurt us. It was just, a few people took advantage of my mother. Certainly didn't step up and give her great advice. We had to sell the home and move into an apartment my senior year in high school. My dad died when I was 16. And my mother gave me wonderful advice that I did not take. And, as we go older, we often realize why my mother really was smarter than I was willing to recognize at the time. But she said, you always need to be aware of your finances. And she said, I have friends that lost their husbands and they had no idea what was going on. And I should have listened to her because I did not. And
it's always the thing, though, you're like, oh, it won't happen to me. Even though it happened to your mom, it's the thing that you're like, it's a one-off situation.
We often pretend that, if I don't acknowledge it, it will not happen. And I see clients do that quite a bit as well. My husband died unexpectedly. He was 62 and I was 59. And he was a brilliant banker. And I was a very busy educator and teacher and painted. And at times I had 4 jobs at one time on top of being a wife and a mother. So I just gladly turned those reins over to him and let him run with it. And he was very good at it. If we started discussing life insurance, it was almost like I didn't even want to know the difference between term and whole life. I was like, I don't have room for this. My file cabinet is full. And so I let him handle it all. And when he died unexpectedly, the first thing I realized is I have no clue about. I knew who managed our money, but I didn't really understand why he was making the decisions that he made. And, I just kind of had to learn from the ground floor. I was very fortunate that I knew a guy from high school that I knew was a very successful financial advisor. And so I used him for advice, and it quickly changed my life.
Yeah, and those are two personal experiences that had you shift your career.
Yes.
But you did say that you were in the teaching industry, and one of the things that I found is we have a couple of advisors that have moved from teaching to financial advising, and they can't mirror each other and go hand to hand, because a lot of things that you need to do is educate.
I think most of what I do is educate. And my seminars, I get so much feedback from my seminars. And time again, people tell me I learned so much and it made so much more sense coming from you. Why haven't I understood this in the past? And when they find out I'm a teacher, it's the light bulb goes off. This is why you know how to explain this in terms that make sense to me. So I think being an educator, former educator, was perfect for what I do now. And I just had to become more comfortable with the mathematics of what I do now, which I had avoided in the past.
And I think a lot of people are hesitant to learn it and just feel like, oh, I always use maybe a different financial advisor, so I don't know enough about it, or I can't learn about it.
Yeah.
But being in education, you can still study and learn it. So you're bringing on two skill sets of one willing to learn and then be able to educate on it.
Well, as an educator, I used to tell my students, the day I stop learning is the day I die. So
that is true. Education, teachers always want to continue to learn side of it. So you guys also have that value there too.
I hope so. I hope I can pass that on.
Yeah. Well, so with your experience with difficult questions, have you found it easier for your practice to bring those up when you are meeting? Because I think that's one of the things that when you talk to other financial advisors, or when somebody's coming in for a second opinion, their financial advisor doesn't want to talk about life insurance, or what if you lose your spouse, or what if you lose a child. Those are difficult questions.
They're very difficult questions.
And a lot of people don't like to get the uncomfortable answer, or sit in kind of a silent space, because you let your clients or even your prospects kind of sit in it for a second, because maybe somebody's never asked them that. So is it become more comfortable, or are they still hard questions?
I think most people are uncomfortable with those questions. I don't think it's, set every now and then. I think most people are uncomfortable with those difficult questions of, what happens if you die? What is going to happen to your life? What is going to happen to your children? Do you have things in motion for your business? Usually businessmen will at least have some kind of idea of what they want to do with their business. Although I have some that haven't even thought about that. I'm a storyteller. And so I share my story, and I lead them into those questions, usually by sharing my story. And I start off with something that is not necessarily a painful experience. For example, after George died, who was my husband, one of the things that hit me is I could not zip up my own dress.
I struggle with that.
So I have no one there to help me with that, let alone with my finances. And so leading into this discussions of when you lose your spouse, so much is taken away from you that you hadn't planned for, that you hadn't thought about, and finances are a big part of that. And so leading them into a discussion with that by having a story that you can, kind of crack a smile about, or a funny incident, kind of softens that discussion. And so that has helped quite a bit. And, and I share my experience of the things that happened to me financially after George died. I mean, I was very fortunate in that, I was financially stable. I was not in danger of losing everything, of losing my home, or drastically changing my lifestyle financially. It was just, okay, I need to do the best job with it. Learning that I was one of over 80%. I mean, they say statistically 80 to 90% of women change financial advisors within the first year of losing their husband. That speaks volumes. I loved my financial advisor. He's a dear friend of mine, but I needed to change. And it wasn't necessarily because he was giving me bad advice. He just didn't understand my perspective. And I needed to take control. And if I'd stayed with him, he was still going to be in control of my money, at least in my opinion. And I needed to take control. I needed to suddenly start running my life because I no longer had,
Did you find that former financial advisor was trying to keep you on the path that your husband set up?
Definitely.
and wasn't giving you the respect of what
Definitely.
you don't know about this or want to know about this. And so he was more, here's what we have, this is in place. And so you didn't feel like you could own it.
He asked me, I asked him, what are we going to do when the stock market corrects? Because I vividly remember what 2008 and 2009 did to me. And I cried many, many nights over that. And kept thinking, how many students did I teach to make that money? And, I no longer had my husband's income, and I had retired from education when he died. And so no longer had that. I was like, and his answer to me was, we have survived bad times before. Wrong thing to say to a widow.
Yeah.
And so when I contacted Gary, I said, I need you to look at my finances. And his first reaction was, oh, okay. There's a lot at risk here. And I went, I know. So he became my financial advisor. And the peace of mind that gave me was huge. And so I said, I need you to talk to some of my friends. They're being given bad advice. And he said, why don't you do it? You've retired. And so I went and got licensed and started working with him. And ironically, now I'm married to him, the president of the company. And made him retire.
Yeah. And how have you also taken that experience of your financial advisor with your late husband, of how he was kind of not giving you a voice in your finances? How are you shifted so that when you're meeting with your clients now, or the husband and the wife, or the partners, how are you working with them so they feel like they both have a voice, so you don't become a part of the 80% when somebody passes away? How have you shifted your business model?
I don't think I never approached it the same way my prior one did. So I didn't have to shift the way. I just kind of started from the get-go, making it my own. And a big part of why my clients become my clients, at least according to the feedback that they give me, is they quickly felt a trust in me. And that's huge. And I don't take that lightly. And so I maintain contact with my clients on a regular basis. They have my personal cell phone. And I don't have anyone who takes advantage of that. But I like Debbi, do have a remote client who will call me on Friday night.
We all have one of those, right?
Twice a year, he calls me on Friday night. And it's not to vent about anything that I've done. He has another experience that he can't get out of, and he just needs to vent. So
yeah.
Sometimes
you just need a voice.
But he knows that I will answer. And I love the fact that my clients know that I will answer them. And so my clients that have lost their spouses will call me. They will call me on a Saturday and say, I need you. Because they know I've walked that walk. They know I've been through that. And I share my story with every one of my clients so that they know who I am, what I come from, what my experience is. And so I think that I've never had anyone after they've lost a spouse leave me.
Do you find part of your questions when you are meeting with a client for the first time, or even an ongoing client, that traditionally we would say the male is focusing on the money and the asset and that side of it, but not what happens, what transitions to the kids or grandkids? So do you kind of blend those conversations?
I bring points up. For example, not knowing the passwords to things is huge. And it's such a personal thing for so many people. And men especially are reluctant to share that information. I don't know why I don't have a male mind, so I can't quite figure that one out. But I've kind of shared the experience of, okay, I needed to cancel my late husband's credit card, and I did not have his password, and I could not do that without his password, even with the death certificate. And so we had to play a guessing game of, okay, let's try to figure out what his password is. And, ultimately I could have gotten it accomplished. It was just a pain that I did not need to experience.
Especially when you have kids. You are focusing on their emotions and wanting to be there for them. And it's hard to manage everything because now you're the mom. Yeah, you're now running the finances, the household, and the kids, and it's all you were doing it before.
Yeah,
but it's a lot more weight on your shoulders.
It really is. Generational vault was huge. I mean, most of my clients are pretty comfortable with technology, although the overwhelming majority of my clients are retirees. So you would anticipate that some are a little bit leery of it. So if those that are leery, I have a hardback notebook that we make up for them so that they have kind of a old school generational vault. But that's been huge. And my clients that have been reluctant to share personal information, especially about finances, with their wife, they're willing to do it on generational vault. I think it's because they maintain control of that.
And how do you kind of position that in your meetings about the generational vault? Do you kind of tell your story?
I tell my story, and I tell them, I had to come up with Three Dog Night before I could access some financial information on my husband. And that was just a blind, God whispered in my ear that George's first concert was Three Dog Night.
Good memory.
That was the security question. He had never shared that information with me. So it truly was just.
Well, and I think some of the things, like my dad was a paper.
Mm-hmm.
So when my mom was going through everything, she's like, why do we have a checkbook from 20 years ago? So then you're also not even just trying to find maybe a login. You're going through 20 years worth of finances to be like, where are we? So there's also sometimes struggles with that.
One client who has every phone book he's ever been given. I definitely have some. I'm a paper only client. So we find a workaround. And I do have some clients where the wife will be one thing and the husband will be the other. And so they have both. I will provide both the hard copy, in the book, and then they will have access to generational vault. But I love the fact that generational vault is there for their children or their beneficiaries if they need it. And especially since we're such a transient population and so many of my clients do not live in the same state with their children. And so, I explain to them the ease of them being able to access this information if they need to.
Yeah, I did the same thing with my mom. She lives in a different state now. And it is something that if she calls me sometimes and even wants a question or help on, then you're playing phone tag or trying to figure out how to log into. So it is a real life situation from not just financial sides, it's medical sides. And that's the generational vault. You can upload all of that. It doesn't just have to be, here's what you use with your firm. It can be those types of things.
Well, I encourage them to even put their wishes of, what do you want? Do you want a funeral? Do you want a celebration of life? What music do you like? Include that in there. Because I will tell you from personal experience, the grief brain kicks in very quickly and you can't comprehend or think of the simplest of questions. And so having it right there in front of you is huge.
Oh, and I think, again, from my experience now because we've gone through it, we have it set up with my mom, but all of me and my siblings are very different. Mm-hmm. So we kind of all have our separate little tasks because my brother is on the financial side. So that's like his role. Mm-hmm. Because of a medical side my sister's always like, I can hold the line a little bit more where the heart doesn't come in. My sister cannot do that. Where my mom's wishes in that moment, my sister won't be able to do that. Right. And so we had to have those difficult conversations. And my sister took it a little personal of like, why don't I have that? Because she's the medical side. My mom's like, because you won't be able to, from an emotional side, take those. And so those things are real life situations.
Well, that's one thing that I never leave a first visit with anyone, whether they're a potential client or our clients, without making sure that they have powers of attorney. I don't leave that visit without them having a power of attorney because I have seen that destroy families.
And I think having that type of appointment process and belief of what you do is huge for your business.
I agree.
Because sometimes people will mention it, but then it's just kind of this is a good value add, but because you're so passionate about it, your clients are really taking the initiative of this is something and it is important.
You're right. And I mean, just in the past week, I have had 4 different people contact me and say, okay, I've been referred to you because you provided this for them. In fact, a few weeks ago, I'm also a notary and I was notarizing their powers of attorney and they had done a trust and You have to have two witnesses for that. So they wouldn't grab their neighbors. And now the neighbors are my clients.
That's the referral.
They were the witnesses. And they went, oh, we need to do this. I went, yes, you do. Let's go do your powers of attorney right now.
Do you find, because sometimes when the spouses or partners are still married,
Mhm.
sometimes it's also hard maybe for somebody to have a second opinion where the husband maybe is willing to come over and meet to kind of be like, okay, let me leave my financial advisor.
Yes.
Do you ever run into those types of appointment processes?
A few times. And I give them the space, and I tell them, you both have to come to this conclusion. And my advice is you share the same financial advisor, unless you are there may be some families that, because of success on one part and family and children relationships, it might be wise to have different financial advisors. But I don't have a single client where both of them are mine. But I give them that space. And so far, I've never had anyone choose the other financial advisor.
I'm guessing with you asking the difficult questions of what if one of us passed away? What would happen to the house? What would happen to the kids?
Yes.
I think just asking those questions when they go home, maybe they're not ready day one, but that conversation probably happens over weeks and months and kind of continues to naturally grow into, okay, yes, this is important. Yeah. So sometimes it's probably just bringing to light those questions.
I did have one husband say, no one has ever asked us those questions. Why? Why aren't they asking us these questions of how is your wife going to survive financially if you died today? No one's ever asking that. And he was 47 years old.
And a lot of times, probably people are like, well, you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Got years down the line.
Years down the line.
But that's not the case.
No.
It could be, in your case, your spouse. You all of a sudden.
I've checked the bottom of my foot. There's not an expiration date on that.
I
don't think anyone else does either. We plan for the best, pray for the best, and also plan for the worst.
But even if you do find out, let's say there's cancer and certain medical, but it could be too late, because then if they give you the timeline, it's already too late, especially from potentially a life insurance side. Key things like that of you can't maybe get certain type of insurance, or you're planning within 6 months to a year. So even if we do know,
I have I had two clients that a year and a half ago started talking to me about, we need to talk to you and we need a will and a trust. And they just never made the appointment. And I'd run into them and kind of, you need to set the appointment if you haven't done this yet. And they did it in May. They did the powers of attorney in May. He was hospitalized the very next day. I did the trust the very next week. And they got it notarized in another state. And he passed away 2 weeks later. And then a month later, she passed away. And while they had the will and the trust, they didn't have time to fund the trust. So everything was still through probate. And it broke my heart because they waited too long. And 53, who thinks they're both going to die within a month of each other. Just very unexpected. So we don't know our expiration date. We don't know. And it's just not worth it. It's not worth putting it on.
No, it isn't. And I think you said a key point that I think also a lot of people miss is that they have a will or they have a trust. But the part that you guys play a key role is they need to fund it. And that's part, I think, which is missed a lot of times.
It's missed a lot.
Because everybody's like, oh, I have a will, I have a trust. And if even I were to ask my mom, she'd be like, oh, we have a will. But like, what's in the will?
I have clients who had trust that they spent $3,000 to $5,000 for. And nothing is funded. And they've had it for 10 years. And I was like, that trust is worthless at this point. It tells who you want to get things, but it's still going to go through probate. And their lawyer never explained to them, you need to fund this trust. And I don't understand that.
Yeah. So how have you probably have always had it part of your practice.
Yes. Well, we actually worked with lawyers. Of course, we were located in several states. And so we knew lawyers that were very good at this. And we would invite them to come to the seminars. And then, or if my clients needed them, we would set up appointments for them. We didn't get any financial benefit from that either way, but it was just a wonderful situation. And then one of those lawyers passed away. And suddenly my clients were without a lawyer. And the law firm that they were with wouldn't help them with the trust. There's got to be a better method from this. And, the lady bosses are amazing. And so I found out about, okay, you can use the state guru and do a trust. And I was like, yes, thank you. So it's just been the perfect solution for us, especially since I have clients in so many different states. And so I don't have to locate an attorney in that state, in that town. I can use a state guru, and it's worked out beautiful.
I love to hear that, because you mentioned the lady boss group, and that's everybody. That's all of you guys, and that's the one thing that our podcast here today as well is you guys are always willing to share.
Yeah.
And that's the one part I love with our women in business, and especially our networking, is that you guys are always cross-sharing ideas, and it's picking up the phone and being like, I ran into this situation.
I love it.
And the support allow you guys, how you all grow your business is you're sharing your knowledge from your experience, but others sharing their experience with safety health.
I agree. Well, we had a gentleman attend one of our women in business breakfast, which English is amazing. And I'm so thrilled that she started all of this. And, we could just kind of bow down and thank her for everything that she's done for us. But he came to one of the women in business breakfasts, and we were in Nashville. And he came up and talked to me afterwards, and he said, I've never seen anything like that in my life. He said, that was the most impressive meeting I've ever been to. And I said, why? He said, you guys were so eager to share ideas. He said, men are not like that. We all think close to the vest. And he said, it's not that it's not greed. It's just you guys are so eager to have each other succeed. And he said, it's contagious. And he said, I love it. And I really think that's our strength. We want each other to succeed.
Oh, 100%. It is, somebody shares an idea, and it's not just the idea shared. It is the excitement behind it, and the cheering people on and celebrating that success of the idea or your process. It is, so then you even feel good about it and want to continue to share, because you're like, wow, like I do know what I'm doing, and I am being successful, and it's the power behind it.
It's huge. And when someone gets has an article in Bloomberg Business Week or the Golf that we celebrate for that. We're so excited for that.
And we've had a lot of those recently.
We've had a lot
and that actually gets a nice little segue, because I even have your book here. Because you are published.
That's a surreal experience.
And that's for you guys, one, just to go through the process. It is a heavy lifting process on it. And for you not only to share it with your clients, your family, your friends, but to share it with other women in the industry and be excited for you is a phenomenal experience, because then it's even more exciting that it's come to life, but you have people to share your success with it.
I agree.
Yeah. And your book, you do dive a lot into your experience side of it. And so we know where the passion comes behind it. Do you also hand this out in appointments, or how do you kind of use your book?
At my seminars, I actually give one away, and you would think they're getting, $1,000. So excited about it. Okay. Thank you very much for that. Obviously, when I have a client who loses a spouse, I give that to him. And I have had quite a few friends and clients that have said, okay, I have a neighbor that's just so sad. Could I get one from you? Or how do I get this? And so if they tell me about it, I send them one. But I've had several that have said, I sent this to so-and-so. And that means quite a bit.
It is definitely something that I think a lot of widows is they do get a lot of things, and something that makes you feel comfortable when you're reading and feeling like I have the answers or I have a resource I can reach out to is probably a huge value.
Well, it is. I mean, when my husband passed away, one of the best things that worked for me was actually talking and sharing with people that had experienced that knew what I was going through. And it wasn't a case of misery loves company. It was, okay, how did you survive this? Or, oh, thank goodness I'm not the only one that experienced this or felt that. So I'm hoping that book does that for people, which is why I titled it the way I did. I needed people to understand this is why I do what I do. I realized there was so much I did not know. And that was self-imposed, which was not brilliant on my part. But I take ownership of that. But also to kind of avoid some of the potential pitfalls, because one of the horrible things that I learned is there are vultures out there waiting to pounce on widows and widowers. And it would shock you to learn how many marriage proposals I had from people I had never met and had never seen in person, and to this day have never seen in person. And they clearly were not after me, they were after my finances. And that was an eye opener. And so that's a big part of why I even became licensed in the first place, because I thought, I've got to help people avoid this pitfall.
Yeah. And that's definitely something that I think it brings so much value to your clients, but then even your clients around you. So to kind of wrap up a little bit here, so you've gotten to these experiences. So maybe for some of our other female financial advisors, they might not have gone through a similar situation or experience. Which right, we hope none. But how would you give advice for how could they still ask some of these questions, because it's still so important, and maybe they don't have their experience to share it, but they can still have comfort to ask the questions?
And that's a great question. And I've actually had other advisors say, I haven't experienced this, so how do I ask you share your story? I don't have that story. And sometimes it doesn't have to be your story. For example, you can say, and my friend Debbi, this is what she experienced, and I don't want you to go through that. But as far as coming up with what even questions to ask in that respect, just sit down and have your own discussion with yourself. What will I do if? And how are you going to answer that? And if you can't answer that, your clients probably can't answer that as well. And so you need to be willing to ask yourself those difficult questions first. And I have discovered that many people don't even want to ask themselves.
That is great advice and a great question, because I think if you went through that process and truly asked yourself that question and you can't answer it, and then it does take you, and what steps got you to be able to answer it, that could still be the experience of I sat down and actually asked myself these questions. And you could be very transparent and vulnerable as if I couldn't answer those questions.
Yeah.
And that's why it's important to ask you these questions.
I agree.
So I think that's
they may be more powerful.
Yeah. Because it also, I think it makes you more human. Because I think that's one thing that clients and prospects do truly value is the trust in the person they work with, and that they feel like there's a personal connection and that we're all human.
I agree.
So I think sometimes we're afraid to kind of share our flaws sometimes with our clients, but sometimes it's the best relationship.
It's all based on honesty. I mean, if you're not completely honest as a financial advisor, you're in the wrong business. Yeah. And so if you can't be honest about those, how should they expect you to be honest about their finances?
Yeah. Those are all great questions. And so I thank you for coming today. So we are going to wrap up on it. But this was a very personal conversation for both me, from my experience, and for you. So I love that we could connect on that one. But I love that we could share it with other female financial advisors, because I think these are questions that really will help them with their clients.
I hope so.
Because they are hard questions, but the hard questions actually become easier when you ask them early on, because when you ask them later in life and too late, the harder question is actually harder.
Handling it during a crisis is not when you want to ask those questions.
Yeah. So for you to help other female advisors avoid those crises are huge. So thank you for coming in today. It's been amazing experience. Your book is phenomenal as well. So it's always good to sit down and actually get to know you guys more on a personal level, because sometimes we don't always have those conversations. So we're so glad that you're here today.
Thank you.
And then we also have more exciting things to come the rest of the week for us.
And I tell you what, I encourage all of the lady bosses to come and take advantage of everything you guys offer here. You make it so easy and comfortable.
Yes. Debbi actually just saw our new studio. So she was saying how the video that you've already used, how much it's helped your business, but even more exciting to come back into the new space. So yes, we are excited for the new space for everybody. You guys get to see our new studio, but outside of the studio, it's pretty impressive now. Yeah. Well, thank you, Debbi. It's great having you here today. Thank you.